Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamuna Hiravana Chadhi Yamuna Hiravana Chadhi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chadhi Yamuna Tiravana Chadhi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parividavasaraswata C. Modest Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Text 6, Canto 1, Chapter 4. Katam alakshata paurai
alakshita paure
samprapta kuru jangalan
samprapta kuru jangalam
umata mukha jadavad
unmanta mukha janavan
vicharan gaja savaye
vicharan gaja savai
katham alakshita paurai
katham alakshita paure
samprapta kuru jangalan
samprapta kuru jangalam
unmata mukha jadavad
unmanta mukha janavan
vicharan gaja savaye.
vicharan gaja savai
How was he, Srila Shukadev Goswami, the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? Purport. The present city of Delhi was formerly known as Hastinapur because it was first established by King Hasti. Goswami Sukadev, after leaving his paternal home, was roaming like a madman, and therefore it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. A sage is not therefore recognized by sight, but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu or a great sage, not to see, but to hear him. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Shukadeva Goswami was a sadhu who could speak on the transcendental activities of the Lord. He did not satisfy the whims of ordinary citizens. He was recognized when he spoke on the subject of Bhagavatam, and he never attempted jugglery like a magician. Outwardly, he appeared to be a retarded, dumb madman, but in fact, he was the most elevated, transcendental personality. I'm going to read two more verses. Katamba pandave yasya rajarshe munana saha samvada samavut tata yatresha satvati shrutihi. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, the Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Purport. The Srimad Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story. It is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is the Shuka Samhita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Sri Sukadev Goswami, the great liberated sage. Text 8. Sa go dhana matra hi griheshu griha medinam advekshate mahabhagas tirti kurvam cha tad ashramam. He, Shukadev Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he did this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Shukadev Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than a half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. that was to sanctify the residents by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami is an ideal preacher, established in the transcendental position from his activities. Those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly men. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. Pretty heavy. Srila Prabhupada, on more than one occasion, spoke of this first canto Bhagavatam as sufficient or everything that anyone may need to achieve perfection of life. And then qualifiers. Perfection of life means bhakti, and bhakti that's without ahaituki apratiyata, without motivation or interruption, or any impediment that can stop it. How to achieve that is the manual or the instructions are found, he packed within this first canto. Again, everything that you need to know to achieve perfection of life is within this first canto of the Bhagavatam. He was conscious of what he was doing, of course, and his service, Prabhupada's service, was to deliver the message of Lord Chaitanya to the parts of the world, English-speaking parts of the world, or the world, where ignorance prevailed, though the antidote for ignorance is knowledge. Knowledge is the antidote for ignorance. And so knowledge of what? Knowledge of transcendence, because persons in universities may have knowledge of something, but not knowledge of transcendence, not knowledge of the purpose of life. It's a misfortune, and stronger language, it's a great cheating to pose oneself as a professor, a teacher of knowledge, and you don't include knowledge of who you are. And knowledge of who you are includes, or it's a subset of, knowledge of the Supreme. Like is described in Bhagavad Gita, but in one thing, by understanding the transcendental nature of Krishna and his birth and his activities, is sufficient to carry one to the spiritual world. That knowledge is not exactly the knowledge, because it's not by book knowledge, but it's by bhakti that one can understand. And that can carry one, bhakti can carry one to the spiritual realm. Purnarjanma na. That's knowledge. That's the antidote for ignorance. So the means to achieve that knowledge, that's the antidote for ignorance, that's in this Bhagavatam. And Shukadeva Goswami was the deliverer. So there are some characteristics of the deliverer, Shukadeva. And one of those characteristics, of course, we heard yesterday, unlike his father, who was a grihastha, Shukadeva Goswami was not a Grihastha. It doesn't mean Vyasadeva was less qualified, and Shukadeva was more qualified because he was renounced. So in other words, what's the standard of renunciation? The standard of renunciation is seeing everything in relation to the source of everything, engaging everything in the source of everything. Hari Sambandha Vastuna. This is the Yukta Vairagya principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching, which is also the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam is everything should be utilized in the service of Krishna. So from each position, in this case Shukadeva, as the standard for a renunciate, he did not indulge in enjoyments of the opulence of Grihastha life. And to illustrate what his visits to a householder's home was brief and purposeful. The purposeful wasn't so he could maintain himself, but the purposeful was so he could give his association to those who required it or were attached to the temporary. And just by his making a visit, by his bringing that auspicious presence to their door, they were benefited. And of course, there were cultured people that understood here's a renunciate, in this case, a pretty exceptional, a naked renunciate. So what that might mean in today's world, who knows? But they recognized he's a renunciate, and they honored the renunciate by offering alms, particularly mentioned here as at the time of milking. And that's what he would accept as his sustenance, the milk from the cow. Doesn't indicate he didn't accept other things, or it doesn't indicate they offered other things, but at least specifically milk from a cow. And so he came at that time for half an hour during milking time and accepted alms purposefully. So this is like the Paribrajakacharya stage of sannyas, the stage where one goes door to door and accepts alms. But again, the purpose is not for purpose, the ideal renunciate is not for the purpose of maintenance, but for the purpose of giving association. There's a very nice example that, if not understood properly, would seem to contradict all of this. The author, Srila Prabhupada, the author of the commentary, spent extensive time in a home of a wealthy family in Bombay while the Juhu property was being constructed, because the deities were on the property that was purchased by Prabhupada with a down payment. It was purchased with a purchase agreement, etc. And deities were then established. But while the temple and his quarters were being constructed, the Juhu temple, Prabhupada was staying at the Mahadeviya's home. And Shrutakirti describes the Mahadeviya's home was like a palace. And he stayed there for quite some time. They were very generous. They, the Mahadeviyas, loved Prabhupada. There's details and details and details. To this day, the son, Kirtan was the name of the son, Preeti was the name of the daughter, and to this day, they have fond memories, without all the detail, fond memories of Prabhupada. And so, but the nature of this place was such, to get to Prabhupada's quarters, you had to go up an elevator. in their home, not an apartment building, in their home, a two-person elevator to get to his quarters. And his quarters was the master bedroom. And was Prabhupada attached? He was accepting the gracious service of the Mahadevya family. So this is, in conjunction with what we heard this morning in these verses and purports. It was for spiritual purification of the Mahadevya family, which was effective because they may or may not have understood. The degree to which they understood Prabhupada, who knows? But they became very attached to him. And here's two details. Two details are the son, Kirtan, showed, 20 years later, Shrutakirti visited the Mahadevya family, and the son brought the typewriter that Prabhupada used while staying at their home, in one of those primitive, whatever you want to call it, typewriters. And Shrutakirti was really excited and said, can this be donated and given to a museum where Prabhupada's paraphernalia is kept at the Juhu temple? And his son was, not for $1 million. There's no price. This is priceless. It was like a firm no. He was attached to the typewriter, understanding what it meant. It was worshipable paraphernalia. And it's in there, it belongs to him. I mean, it didn't belong to the Mahadevya family, it belonged to him. And there was no way he was going to part with that typewriter. Then, some times later, because Shrutakirti stayed for a little bit of time, and, stories and stories and stories and stories of their exchanges with Prabhupada. And Mrs. Mahadevya, Gauri was her name, Gauri Mahadevya, brought out the portable tape recorder that Shrutakirti kept with him every time there was a morning walk and every time there was a recording, and he had this little, ancient dinosaur, big size, heavy tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape recorder that he carried around with him. Who knows how he said in his book, I don't know, I carried this thing. It was really big. But there wasn't any discussion about, could you donate this to the Juhu temple? It was a deep sentiment for Prabhupada manifest in the form of, the reel-to-reel tape recorder. No negotiations about giving it or selling it or something. She was attached. She was attached to the So the purpose, mission accomplished. They, the Mahadevya family, became transcendently attached to a transcendental personality. And that's what's being described in the purport here. The function of Shukadeva Goswami wasn't just, this is a practical means to maintain Parivrajakacharya, going door to door, staying for half an hour, and accepting alms of milk at milking time. It was for giving his association. And the part that's not described here, because yesterday was Shukadev, it was Vyasadeva chasing his son, and his son just kept going. There's intermediate circumstances. Father conceived of a way to bring him back so he could teach him the details of Srimad Bhagavatam, and that isn't described here, but he had received the details of Srimad Bhagavatam from his father by clever arrangement to get him to come back and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, now fully equipped. And now he's living his life after again departing, fully equipped with the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam heard from his father. And his father knew what he was doing. His father's Trikaligya. He was preparing his son to be able to speak the message. And so he did. But then there's this question comes in the beginning. How did the people of Hastinapur recognize him? Because he went with a transcendental mission that was to give his association to Maharaj Parikshit and speak Srimad Bhagavatam. But how did he know that? And how everything was arranged by the Lord's internal potency. And how did the people, the everyday people in Hastinapur, recognize him? They recognized him by his transcendental quality, even before he spoke. It's spoken here, the purport says, they recognized him when he spoke. But even before he spoke, he was recognized. Certainly the sages, when they were performing a yajna at the request of Maharaj Parikshit, when Shukadev Goswami came, they immediately rose. They stopped their yajna to offer respect. So there was something about a qualified person that by their presence commands, not demands, but commands respect. There's many examples in Prabhupada's Leela where Prabhupada was walking in some place. People hadn't met him before, but just being in his presence, they manifested symptoms of respect. When an elevated person comes into one's presence, minimally cultured people stand. Others may offer obeisances before that elevated person, not just because he's a sannyasi, but because he's an elevated person. So by his presence, Prabhupada commanded respect. So Shukadev Goswami is, by his presence in Hastinapur, is commanding respect. There's a potency connected with him that was not yet spoken, but perceived. And so he was honored as a renunciate, but also as a superlatively elevated personality. Offered respect, due respect. So step back a little bit. All of this is a response to an earlier question. The sages are asking Sutta, how did the Bhagavatam become manifest? So the title of the chapter is The Appearance of Sri Narada, which he has a very important role to play in the manifesting of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll get there. The verses of the chapter will get there. But the scene of Shukadev Goswami coming to Hastinapur and coming in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit and being requested by Maharaj Parikshit to answer certain questions, mainly, was the duty of a man who's about to die. It's a detail, but there's a group of, I don't know exactly who they are, but a group of PhD scholars that meet periodically, once a month or something like that, and they have PhD scholars, not just ISKCON people, but all kinds of people, discussing the topic of preparing for death and what different isms or different teachings say about this topic. How do you prepare yourself for that inevitable? Of course, it's based upon the main issue of the Bhagavatam itself, but different religions or different isms, different teachers address that topic. So they're from their scholarly position discussing what are the principles involved in that topic, preparing for death, which is not like a lovely topic, but it's a real topic. Gentleman Richard Jaravyadi, and how to prepare for where we're going next. So many times Prabhupada would speak on that point, from Bhagavad Gita and otherwise. People don't know what's next. Where are you going? Who are you and where are you going next? No idea. So supposing you have an idea, then how do you prepare? So anyway, that's their topic. If somebody is interested, let me know, and I can forward to you the link. Then you can sign up and become a member of that. A listener of that discussion group. And as far as I understand, it's both live and recorded. So whatever they've done already, the recordings are available. I've been too busy to attend or to even hear the recordings, but they're available if you're interested. Let me know. I'm going to end, and if you permit, I'm going to take a little break and go use the restroom and come back, and then you prepare questions. We'll do part 2. I'll be right back. Any comments or questions? Yeah, Shri Rupa. Behind your mask.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was thinking about the sense of urgency,
Sense of urgency.
and I don't have a sense of urgency, but I see devotees that before they became devotees who've been seeking, and then they became devotees because they were looking for it, for like the truth and stuff. I feel like they have more of a sense of urgency than I do, and when I think about how I became a devotee, and it was like I opened my eyes and it was like right there, and I didn't have to look much, and so I don't know what to do. I don't have as strong of a sense of urgency as someone who is looking for it.
So how do you get it? That's your question?
Yes.
Well, there's several ways. One way is crisis. You kick in the seat of the pants and calamity, and I better, the sense of urgency can be awakened by calamity. And Krishna is prepared. He can make calamities, no problem. And it's not like, because you're thinking about it, you're setting yourself up for a calamity. Because, Krishna can, he reciprocates with devotees. Even, little people like us, he reciprocates. So he can make, but there may be another, and another is association with those who have a sense of urgency. And the sense of urgency, another way of saying urgency, another dimension of urgency is enthusiasm, utsahan. So those that are very enthusiastic, they may not be a fearful kind of sense of urgency, but an enthusiastic sense of urgency, an enthusiastic sense of applying oneself with enthusiasm, that is through association, that quality, that we take on qualities like those with whom we associate, as you know. So associating with such persons, and then ideally on a regular basis, as far as possible. A third point, aside from sadhu sangha, calamity and sadhu sangha, recently, of late, I've been going through the Shrutakirti's book. What's the problem? And he doesn't have a sense of urgency. He has a sense of tireless, endless devotion. I mean, he has the structure of the book as little mini chapters, and at the end of each mini chapter, he has like a little prayer. Not all, most of them have a little prayer, and that is lifetime after lifetime. May I have your personal association and personal service. In different ways of expressing that depending upon, what the topic of the chapter was. These memories sustain my life. May I never forget this very, very special experience of being with you when this and that and the other thing happened. May that be never erased, and may get the opportunity to do service like this lifetime after lifetime. So that's not an urgency, but it's a sense of pure devotion. So how do you get that? Because that's your question. So by association with persons that have it, and that it just redefined what that sense of urgency is by associating with such persons. May I come to that kind of attachment to a representative of the Supreme Person who is with these qualities and these characteristics. It's part of our teachings, certainly. Mama Janmati Janmati Shri Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaitiki Twaye. It's in our teachings, Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So then the aspiration just turned the dial a little bit, and it moved from urgency to enthusiasm. That's Rupa Goswami's teaching. Utsahan, and then how to develop that utsahan. That's same. It's a different. It's the same question, but the dial is a little different. And then there's writings and writings and writings on that. Rupa Goswami's writings, commentaries, and so read those. Develop a modified sense of make your goal or feel the sense of urgency to get that enthusiasm, and that's sustained enthusiasm, not unsteady but steady. And then how to attain that. That, all of that, what I just said, that's a major part, or it's a significant part of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's writing in the little book, Madhurya Kandambini, and a lot to be said about that. Little coming attractions. I have a plan. It's going to take some time to prepare, but redo the presentation, more comprehensive presentation on Madhurya Kandambini. That, because to go from unsteady to steady. And what's involved besides just consistent sadhu sangha? What are some of the obstacles that make unsteadiness or diminish enthusiasm that's sustained? So it's an important topic for the devotees, because it's how we go from where we are to where we want to go. You can read through just, ahead of time, read through chapter 3 of Madhurya Kandambini, and there's a lot in there. And then there's commentaries on what he wrote, but there's a lot in there, just that chapter 3, from unsteady to steady. Anishtita to nishta. Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It felt very fitting hearing you speak about renunciation earlier when you spoke about Sukadev Goswami, I think, going to different houses but not expecting anything from the Grihastas. And then same with Srila Prabhupada, going to that house in Mumbai. Just the other day, I woke up with a dream, feel like a disturbing dream, thinking I had to get rid of some of my things. And I was thinking, oh boy, I have so much work to do with renunciation. And I was just wondering if you could speak to what that might look like for a grihasta and how it can be done in a mature way, but conscious way of developing renunciation.
Well, there's two things. There's needs, and then there's the superfluous. I mean, what your question reminds me of a young college girl who, during the Christmas break or the winter break, they didn't go home. They stayed where they stay, and they were taking the opportunity to go more deeply in their devotional practice. And in the course of staying, they entered into this mood that you're speaking about. Like, look at all this stuff. And I'm at the earlier stage before being married, and I got all this stuff. And do I really need this stuff? So it's that question. And then they decided, this young Vaishnavi decided, here's what I'm going to do, 2 things. The stuff that I don't need, I'll find some place where I can make a donation to somebody or something and give it away. And then the second was, I'm going to be very conscious, I'll try to be very conscious of not bringing stuff home that I don't need. Then what's need? That's a good question. Well, supposing something. So for emergency, I may need something. So you keep that something for emergency. Then where do you draw that line? How much is really emergency and how much is not emergency? And then, so it's raising the question, it's anasaktasya vishayan yatara. It's the principle of yukta vairagya. If you don't need something, what's the purpose of having stuff you don't need? Feel a sense of security or happiness, or what is it? It's not spiritual for a grahastha. And then a second, so pare down that which you don't need by means described. It's thoughtful, not impulsive, but progressive. Evaluate, and then before adding something else to my paraphernalia, do I really need this? And if so, what's a good way to maintain for the purpose of need? Here's an example. An example is money. So, because of this past weekend, I was asking some devotee who is presently unemployed, what are you living on? They had some savings, and based upon their savings and living a streamlined life, a simplified by circumstance, simplified life, I can exist, I can subsist, I and my family can subsist for another year and a half based upon savings. So that's prudent. And then where's enough? Who knows? When the year and a half bell rings and there's still no employment, then what? So that's subjective. But that's just that's besides paraphernalia. That's the backup plan in case. What to speak of as a grahastha, then what's the stage of retirement and in the stage of retirement, and what's our plan as grahastas? What will we do? What will be our maintenance, rather than placing burden on dependents, and all those things. So it's a family decision, but with a plan that always has bumps in the road, unexpected something. It could be good fortune besides ill fortune. It could be, so then another principle, just trying to be responsive to your question, ask those persons that are experienced. Grahastas that are more experienced than you, what do you do? Do you think about these things? And when you think about these things, what do you do? And then you're going to get different responses because different people are different. But with those whom you respect, because their lifestyle and that their mood and their mission in life looks like something, I and we can aspire for, what does it look like? And from their advice, it's not like you're now bound by their advice, but you can understand something that you weren't able to think about today from their experience. It comes back, the whole thing is resting upon the Yukta Vairagya principle. And then, where's the line go? So when you have a sense of where the line goes after all those things that I just narrated, always be looking for drawing the line a little tighter, progressively. Just like, what your sadhana is on Ekadasis, or what your sadhana is on appearance days, or what your, whatever, your immersion in study. And how much time do I dedicate to study in preparation for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you, as a principle of how you make decisions, leverage less on the material, more on the spiritual, even as a grahasta. So you have to do some of on the material side, and then following those principles. It's a long-winded answer, but it doesn't stop there. It's just a little sharing. It's a big topic buzzing around persons that are on the cusp of their vanaprastha stage of life. What do we do? What am I supposed to do? So that the student life is easy. I mean, what I'm supposed to do, and then married life, it's it's complicated, but at least the direction is. Then what do I do after that? What does that look like? What's suited for me? It's a big question. Yes, Preeti? It's a big question. Just be a grandparent. That's a simple answer. Look after the next generation. Is that it? So then, asking those questions can lead to, a revitalization of bhakti life, where there are things that a grahasta living in that ashram can and should do with regard to the principle of renunciation, etc. And then the vanaprastha stage, what are some of the elements? Then customize a plan, allowing for bumps in the road. Someone else?
This point of continuous sadhu sangha was very profound and important when you mentioned, and also I had been contemplating about this. The point you mentioned about Srila Prabhupada's presence and how the family was attached to him
Not was, is.
is yes, Guru Maharaj. And I also feel that there are glimpses when we are around elevated personalities who are connected with Krishna, who are in transcendence, we get those experiences of very, very happy enthusiasm to do the service. And these glimpses are so good, such good feeling that we just want to stay in those moments forever. But as soon as the association breaks, that wretched condition comes back again. The moods are, very heavy, and we try for a few more days that maybe we will sustain this, but it just doesn't happen, and it feels so sad that wow, there is no hope for me. It starts feeling like that. So, but those glimpses are very, very they are cherished forever. They are cherished, and that those memories never go away. So my question is, Guru Maharaj, that this continuous sadhu sangha, may I please hear a little more about this? Because I believe that when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, so many devotees were constantly in this kind of bliss. They just wanted to do something for him, like always, always, always. And he used to double the targets, and they still used to be so happy, never felt like, oh what is this? So I just want to understand, was that because of his continuous presence with them? And
This a multi-layered question. There are some devotees, just because I've been very involved in Shrutikirti's book, it's still with him. It's not gone from him. It's not just once upon a time memory. It's a mood that he carries. And his aspiration in one place, he repeats something that Tamal Krishna Maharaj told him in Vrindavan, Shrutikirti, because Shrutikirti was not only with Prabhupada, he was with his secretaries who were GBC members, one of them being Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was like, a very powerful person. In Vrindavan, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Shrutikirti, one day we'll return to the Vaikuntha, to Goloka Vrindavan, and waiting there will be Srila Prabhupada, and we'll get the opportunity to serve him just as we're serving him here. So that was inspirational, but that's not the expectation that carries Shrutikirti. This expectation that carries Shrutikirti is birth after birth. And it's not just a memory. It's something he carries with him. So in my response to the general question that you're asking is, what's our place of shelter? Do we have a place of shelter? And what's that place of shelter? And it's a place of shelter. It's not transient. It's not vague. Any more than it's like this whole discussion that we had of the Bhava expansion of Krishna, who returned with Nanda Maharaj. There's a nice commentary, very detailed commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this topic of, Krishna stayed in Mathura and Krishna returned with Nanda Maharaj. And he uses the language of two Krishnas. So Nanda Maharaj and the residents of Vrindavan were in bliss. Aside from this, the other Krishna that wasn't with them anymore, but they were in bliss. So that bhava expand, this is it's a different and a more mature stage of bhakti for you, for me. It's accessible, where it's not just a memory that fades. It can be a memory that fades, but it can be something that experientially we're feeling connected. There are many devotees, aside from Shrutakirti, there are many devotees that are as vibrant as they were when Prabhupada was present by the engagement in service, because that's the medium, the service unto. I mean, here's a practical example. Book distribution. Deity worship and, kirtan and any other thing, but just to take book distribution. They're devotees that they feel intimate connection with Prabhupada through the medium of book distribution. And examples and examples and examples and examples that in modern life that indicate, the merciful person who I am engaged in this book distribution for. Ultimately, it's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then that means Krishna, but Prabhupada, the medium, the link, and that feeling the mercy and having experiences of this thing, that thing, the other thing, and how did this thing, that thing, the other thing happen? It's mercy only. Krishna is manifesting, the mercy of Srila Prabhupada is manifesting this thing, that thing, the other thing. So it's a clear experience, not just a memory, a faded memory, through the medium of service. That's my emphasis. How do you stay connected? What's our place of shelter? It's being who we really are, and we're servants. And the servants isn't abstract. There's a relationship. There's someone who we're serving. And that sense of connection through the medium of service. And that's our Krishna consciousness. So it's not just a memory that fades. It's a place of shelter.
I had one more question.
And it's it's not just somebody over there, some exalted devotee over there has that experience. It's available through the medium of service. And really simple people can have that experience. Not just, a tape recorder or typewriter, but, or a memory. Go ahead. Second point.
It's a different question, Guru Maharaj. Like you mentioned about these college professors who,
Yeah.
like I sometimes feel very worried for children. Sometimes they might feel that this doesn't apply to me, like topic of death. They might feel that, oh, I'm just so
Gotta
young.
live forever.
So I want to very gently teach them that although it's very heavy topic, but it's relevant. And also want to teach them that transcendence is not something which is just unknown to you. You can know it. It's reachable. And just give some interest into it and you will know the magic.
Well, different individual souls have different stimulants that awaken something that's dormant, asleep. So there may be some, you have a desire, you're speaking of a particular desire, a training desire, and it may be, you know, how you're presenting, and it's, you know, the time, place, and circumstance in their lives. It may resonate, may not resonate. And it's not like you failed because it didn't resonate. It's just, so because of being, you know, the parent, it's a matter of wishing to convey X, that understanding the receiving end. What's a medium that this children or dependent can understand X, and then learning that. And one of the best ways is you model it. And then the example speaks stronger than precept. And because of the connection of, you know, child and parent, they see what they see, and they experience what they experience, and through whatever the medium, because of that sense of connection, which is a natural way to learn. And then there's details about on the receiving end, what's going on with that individual. There's this Western saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I have a question about cleanliness and punctuality in deity worship. Why it is important?
Why is deity worship important? That's what you're asking?
No. The question is why it is important cleanliness. Cleanliness
Why is cleanliness important?
and punctuality.
And there's a third one. I'm letting you know. There's a third one. Presence. So, it's external, but the external is a manifestation of something that's internal. To maintain cleanliness external is possible when it leads to that cleanliness internal. And the cleanliness internal is to prepare me to approach the object who is supremely pure, and maintaining the external cleanliness helps me maintain the internal cleanliness, so that I can be in the presence of the supreme pure, and be present with the supreme pure in the proper mood. It's external, so it's not in essence. It's external, but it indicates something. I can't maintain myself or the circumstance of the deity worship in a less than clean condition, because of the object. I'm the subject, and the deity is the object who is being served. To the pleasure of the deity, it must be with that mood of cleanliness, indicating the internal, preparing myself by that external, preparing the internal. Okay? You have a second part. No, okay. Preeti Lakshana, you want to say something? You sure? Okay. Okay, we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.